In this video, you will learn 5 great tips on how to craft amazing stories that will help you form a deeper connection with your audience. Storytelling isn't just for films, it's for businesses too. Well-told stories draw emotional responses from your audience that make them more likely to convert, stay loyal to your brand, and keep making purchases again and again. Good storytelling is therefore a vital ingredient to any successful marketing campaign. So keep watching to learn just how you can make the most of storytelling for your business. Hi there, I'm Jess here at Spiel Creative. Now before we get started, make sure you click the subscribe button and hit the bell so that you'll get notified every time we upload a new video to help you with your video marketing. So let's dive right in. Too many businesses think that providing cold, hard facts alone about their products or services is enough to convince their prospects to make a purchasing decision. However, the results of numerous studies clearly suggest that this just isn't the case. In fact, according to experts like Dr. Gerald Zaltman, a professor at Harvard Business School, up to 95% of our purchase decisions are actually based on our subconscious judgments and emotions, which we later justify with rational reasoning. That's why smart marketers use storytelling to connect with our emotional sides, making us far more receptive to their message. But don't take our word for it. Let's take a look at a case study that shows just how powerful proper storytelling can be. Before 2016, the Canadian arm of the popular diaper brand Huggies was losing out in a big way to its rival, Pampers, who had 100% of all Canadian hospital contracts. Huggies knew that if they wanted to compete, they really needed to find a way to forge an emotional connection with expecting mothers, to convince them to buy Huggies before arriving at the hospital, instead of defaulting to the brand that the hospital would provide. After a period of deliberation, Huggies realised that actually the solution was right under their noses, in their brand name. By telling the story of how babies benefit from hugs and linking their brand Huggies to the mission of leaving no baby unhugged, Huggies managed to create a much stronger emotional bond between its brand and its customers. And the results their campaign achieved were simply phenomenal. After Huggies ran the campaign, their sales skyrocketed by a whopping 30%. Not only this, on social media, the campaign went viral, generating more than 2 million likes, comments, and shares, with engagement rates that were 300% higher than the industry standard. So, after hearing of Huggies' great success, you're probably wondering how you can use storytelling to get results like they did, right? Well, to help you with exactly this, we've got 5 great tips. Starting with tip 1, swap your story's format from beginning, middle, end to normal, explosion, new normal. In marketing, successful storytelling is all about the transformation that your product will bring to its customers. While we all know stories need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, it's not actually that useful to think about them in quite this same way when it comes to marketing. Consider this. If you're following the typical beginning, middle, end model, you could make a story about your sandwich business, for example, that goes something like this. John forgot he had a sandwich in his coat pocket. He reached in, he took out the sandwich, he begins eating it, and finishes eating that sandwich. Buy sandwiches at John's sandwich store. I'm sure you'll agree it wasn't exactly very inspiring. However, if you follow the normal, explosion, new normal storytelling model developed by professional storytelling expert Kindra Hall, you have to write your story in such a way which involves a convincing transformation, as the structure requires that you explain how life was before your product, i.e. the normal, then that you introduce your product, the explosion, and then that you show how life has changed afterwards. That becomes the new normal. Using this normal, explosion, new normal framework, we can now change our story of John to something like this. 10 years ago, on his birthday, John was starving in the frozen Arctic. That's our normal. Just as his body was on the edge and he was about to give in to hypothermia, he thought of his wife and remembered the sandwich she had left him in his jacket pocket. He reached into his pocket, grabbed out the sandwich she had made, took a bite, and was restored to full health almost immediately. That's our explosion. John made it back home, where doctors studied him as a miracle of medicine. Now John and his wife pass on their good fortune by making Brighton's best sandwiches based on the same exact recipe that saved his life so many years ago. Order right now on the corner of First and Broadway. And that becomes our new normal. It's quite a bit more interesting and engaging, right? So make sure you consider this framework when crafting stories for your business. Tip 2, time and place. Great stories are always set in a time and a place that help capture the audience's interest right from the get-go. Have you never thought of why some of our favourite fairy tales when you were growing up begin with "once upon a time"? It's important that you consider this when telling your story, as providing the right context is key to hooking your audience and making it that much more relatable. And now you know why our story of John is set 10 years ago on his birthday in the frozen Arctic. Okay, so moving on, we have tip 3, include a relatable character. The best stories are always character driven, which means they focus in one way or another on the journey of a character that the audience can in some way relate with. Just think of any great story and inevitably it will be associated with at least one great character. So how do you come up with a great character for your story? Well, as we are discussing crafting stories for your business, a good natural place to start is surely by understanding your target audience and considering what kind of characters they would be most likely to relate with. For example, if you're a clothing brand with your core target audience being professional men between, say, 21 and 35, a 25-year-old male may be a suitable character for your story. Not only should you think about the age and the gender of your character in relation to your target audience, but also consider the persona of the character. It should be relatable for your audience. Another key component of making your character relatable is having them show some kind of vulnerability. Look, nobody is perfect, so your main character shouldn't be either. Just think of some of the most popular characters of time, say Batman, Cinderella, Spider-Man. They all have flaws and vulnerabilities that we can relate to and therefore empathise with. The key is to ensure that your audience can see themselves, at least on some level, in the shoes of your story's main protagonist. And showing some kind of vulnerability can go a long, long way in achieving this. Okay, so now that we've covered the importance of a relatable character, the next tip I will cover pretty much is the secret sauce, which separates a mundane story for a truly great one, which wins hearts as well as minds. Tip 4, elicit emotion. Now, when I say emotion, I don't necessarily mean overwhelming feelings of hope or grief or fear or joy. Of course, there are many cases in which strong emotions are entirely necessary, like if you're promoting an importable charitable cause and really need to move people to take action. But in other situations, it's also fine to go for more subtle types of emotion, like the feeling of relief you might experience when you realise dinner just got a whole lot easier with the help of a new delivery app, for example. Those emotions can be just as effective as the more intense ones, and they can be harnessed to huge effect in your campaigns. The key takeaway here is that you really think about the emotional journey you want your story to take your audience on, and not just concentrate on the rational, hard facts. But how do you actually solicit an emotional response from your story? Well, in video storytelling, the saying, show, don't tell, really does apply. So making sure your visuals properly capture the right emotions is absolutely key. This means alongside having a good narrative, directing the clips in a way which maximizes their impact is key. This is where using an experienced team can really be of help. In addition to showing, hearing is also key to generating the right emotions. This includes making sure the dialogue used in your script really hooks your audience. Words used should be descriptive and catchy, and try not to let your script get overly wordy. As a rule of thumb, alongside show don't tell, less is more really does apply when it comes to dialogue. In addition, the right choice of background music and good use of sound effects are absolutely crucial to triggering the right emotions for your viewers. A perfect example of this, if you try watching a scary movie scene without any background music or any sound effects, you will notice its emotional impact drops drastically. On our channel, we actually have dedicated videos which cover background music and sound effects in detail. So if you do need any more help with this, make sure you check out those videos. I've actually included the link to these videos in the description below as well. Okay, and lastly, but certainly not least, tip 5, have a moral to your story. The moral of your story can be something related directly to your product or service. For example, your story can lead to a conclusion such as, really care about saving your customers time so they can spend more of it with their family and friends. Or, we provide real value for money. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be something so specifically related to your product or service. Now, another strategy that many successful brands also use is to provide a more generic moral to their story, which is then anchored to their brand. For example, although Nike sells sportswear, they rarely directly promote a specific product in their adverts, but rather focus on a more generic moral, which is just do it. This moral inspires people to achieve their goals and dreams, and this positivity is then anchored to Nike's brand and Nike's products. The type of moral you choose to include in your story really depends on the type of business you are in and the specific goals of your story. The key thing is that you give this thought and choose the option which is right for your business. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and maybe you've learned something new. If so, please remember to subscribe to our channel so that you get notified each and every time we release new videos to help you with your marketing. As always, you can also reach out to us at www.spielcreative.com if you need any further help or have any further questions. Now, what are you waiting for? Get out there and go and tell your story to the world.